As LeBron James said when he won his first NBA title, it's about damn time. The Saints have fired Dennis Allen as their head coach, and this could be the first step towards acceptance and rebuilding this franchise. Let's talk all about it right here on the Straight Up Saints podcast.
You're listening to the Straight Up Saints podcast.
What is up, Who Dat Nation? Welcome back inside another edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast, a Monday morning emergency edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. I'm your host, Chris Voglu, and as always, this podcast is brought to you by Scott McNair Injury Lawyers. Have you been injured in any kind of accident, car, truck, 18-wheeler, or hurt offshore? Scott McNair handles it all. You give him a call at 504-500-1111 for a free consultation. They'll always fight for the win. After a god-awful loss to the Carolina Panthers, where all of us said there is no way on this earth that you could bring Dennis Allen back, the Saints said, we hear you. He's not coming back. They fired Dennis Allen here 9 a.m. On this Monday morning, and for the first time in maybe 3 years, I'm finally happy. It doesn't mean it solves everything, right? And we'll talk about what the Saints need to do and why there's so many more steps for them to get back to being a perennial playoff team. But this was the first step towards acceptance that Dennis Allen, who may be a nice guy, may honestly be a gentle soul, is not a good head coach. And the proof is in the pudding with his 26-53 record. The proof is there with the 7-game losing streak. The proof is there with his inability to make adjustments when shit gets tough. And the fact that his defense, which is supposed to be the backbone of this team, has gotten progressively worse week to week. So before we jump into everything and you guys share your thoughts, I want to remind you, if you enjoy our content here, please smash the like button. It greatly helps out the channel, and subscribe. And like I mentioned, just like we do for post-game live streams, put in your thoughts and I'll make sure to pull up your comments as we go through the show. It might be a little bit of a different style as what we do with the topic. So Dennis Allen fired. This was a brutal 2.5-year stretch for the Saints, 7-10, followed by a fraudulent 9-8 season against a horrible record, and now 2-7, where they pull the plug. They haven't officially named an interim coach yet. I'd imagine they go with Darren Rizzi. That would be my guess. I think that Darren Rizzi is expected to get that interim tag. I would be shocked if they go with anyone else. He's someone who they highly respect in the building. And let's call a spade a spade. Special teams has been one of the few good things for the Saints. Honestly, this entire season, outside of a Rashid Shaheed fumble, which isn't special teams' fault. That was a Rashid Shaheed problem. Special teams have been a good unit. So Darren Rizzi, in my opinion, will get the interim tag. And then you see how he does. I don't think you promote the interim coach long-term. I think that's where you make mistakes. The Raiders would be a prime example with Antonio Pierce struggling right now. But again, the first step towards ever fixing this problem was firing Dennis Allen, because he lost the locker room. The players were fed up. And if you put him out there for another week, you would have been telling your players, we don't care about your complaints. This is your coach, and you guys are going to have to live with him. So I commend the Saints for doing that. That is step one. Now step two is realizing they need more football minds, different football minds in this building, because they're so comfortable with the Sean Payton way, even though Sean Payton's not there. And that's really costing them. So I hope this is more of the turning point for the Saints and not just a day where we got to celebrate DA being fired and then them going right back to what they know. So what do they know? I think that brings me up to some candidates, and then I'll get into what you guys have to say. I think there's a lot of people who are going to be thrown out right now. I think the first one that people are going to mention is Ben Johnson. Do I think he's realistic? No. If I'm Ben Johnson, I'm probably going to have my pick of NFL teams. Why would I want to go to one where the cap situation's not great, where management's a little bit tight, where I feel like, I don't have the best assets? Now, you might have a top 5 pick because the Saints have been downright atrocious, and if the draft started today, the Saints would have a top 3 pick. But I don't know if they would get Ben Johnson. Would Mike Vrabel be a guy that they want to kick the tires on? I think Mike Vrabel's a great culture guy, but do you want to go defense again? And if you do want to go defense again, I think the number one name that's going to be brought up, and I don't know how I really feel about it, is Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn, to me, has done a marvelous job with Detroit. You just saw their defense just shut out Green Bay on the road yesterday. But Aaron Glenn kind of feels more of what the Saints know, and I think for them, they need a hard reset. And I think Aaron Glenn would just be kind of a remix on what they currently have done. Now, I think Aaron Glenn will be better than Dennis Allen, but that's not saying much. The bar is so low when it comes to Dennis Allen. So we'll see what happens. I know Aaron Glenn will be a name that's been mentioned. I'd imagine he's already being mentioned. So it'll be very fascinating to see if that's the direction they go. I'd imagine he comes in for an interview, but I don't know how I feel about that. Now, other names that could be under the radar, and maybe the Saints have to take a shot on these guys that other teams wouldn't because their situation might not be as attractive. Liam Cohen, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator. I think he has a really, really impressive resume so far. We've seen him have success with Kentucky. That was Will Levis's best year at college. We've seen him have success with the Rams. So he's been under McVay's system. And now we're seeing him have success in Tampa Bay. And Baker Mayfield, prior to them losing Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, was having a really good season. And they've run the football well. So he would be my under the radar target, in my opinion. And then Aubrey Pleasant from the Rams, another guy. I think it's always smart to, at minimum, show interest in people in that Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan pipeline. So those would be two names that I mentioned. Obviously, if you guys have candidates that you want to talk about, I'll pull them up. I'm sure people will mention Bill Belichick at some point. I would caution against that. I think Bill Belichick is on the outs, and the Saints have to get with something new. So we'll see which direction they go in. But like I mentioned, Ben Johnson, Mike Vrabel, Aaron Glenn, Aubrey Pleasant, Liam Cohen. There's going to be a lot of names that are going to be thrown in here. Aaron Glenn's probably going to be the one that's mentioned the most because of his ties with the Saints. I just hope the Saints, if they were to hire him because they believe he's the best candidate, not because that's what they know. Because if they go off that's what they know, we'll be right back in this spot 3 years from now talking about how the Saints once again blew their head coaching opportunity. And I think for New Orleans, it is so important that they go out there and conduct a thorough search and feel like at the end of the day, who they picked is genuinely the best guy to develop this program. Because they've been talking about finding a coach to develop. I think if you're going to do that, you have to have patience with your next guy. You can't just bring in the next guy because, kumbaya and you guys are friends. That's not the way to run a business. And if that's what you do, then us Saints fans are fucked. So I hope that there is some change. As for Dennis Allen, again, I don't want to, celebrate someone losing their job. It feels kind of fucked up. But in this particular instance, this obviously is one of those situations where you don't even have like a nice message to say as they leave. Like, this team has been just pathetic. And, it's not all on Dennis Allen. I get that. But as a head coach, when your record is 26-53 all time, more times than not, you are the guy to blame. So I don't consider him the fall guy. I consider him the first step towards salvation. But the Saints have to make other steps to get to that point. So we'll see what happens. But DA fired. Interim tag probably goes to Darren Rizzi. Heck, it might have already gone to him while I'm talking right now. And he's been named the interim coach, according to Diana Rossini. So I think for New Orleans, now it's all about how does this team respond under Rizzi, and then we'll get to coaching candidates later. But you had to do it for this week. You could not have a Superdome filled with Falcons fans as your team proceeds to get blown out because they've quit on the coach. At least for this week, you're going to get some inspired effort. How long does that effort last? Well, I don't know. It might last a week. Might not even last a week. The Jets fired Robert Saleh and then ripped off 3 straight losses. So the interim coach doesn't always solve everything. But it's good to know that the players' complaints were heard. And this doesn't solve everything. But for people worrying, was Gale not going to make the move? Were they going to be too content? I think Gale clearly heard the complaints and said, all right, we got to do something. Because the Saints have never fired a coach midseason. They don't like to fire coaches midseason. And now they did it. So I guess I have to give them credit for that. But like I said, there's more work that needs to be done. So let's get into what you guys have to say. I'm gonna style this format a little bit differently. I really want to open it up to you guys because this is supposed to be somewhat of a celebration. I said I'm not supposed to celebrate a guy losing his job, but in this particular instant, we'll make an exception. So we'll start off with the super chat here from Mello said, we shouldn't have kept DA to guarantee. We should have kept DA to guarantee the first pick of the draft. LOL. Had the locker room not crumbled, I would have said yes to that. But when Alvin's saying, hey, we don't have confidence in coaching, when Cam Jordan's walking away from the tunnel and just looks like he's lost his spirit, when Tyrann Mathieu pretty much, head in his hands, tears in his eyes in the locker room, how can you tell those grown men that you're stuck with Dennis Allen, whether you like it or not? You just can't do that. So I understand the sentiment, but truthfully, guys, we got to see. Rizzi could win against the Falcons or lose against the Falcons, and this losing streak can continue. There's no guarantee that this is automatically going to stop the bleeding. It just shows that, you see the results aren't good enough and they're not up to your standards. So for that reason, I'm happy about it. But I don't think firing DA means that the losing streak's going to necessarily stop. They might still be going. Jerry G says, hallelujah. Finally, just call me Trey says, I can all say for everyone, like LeBron once said, it's about damn time. Tavia says, about fucking time. Let's go. DeMonte says, saw the news. This is what dreams are made of. It is. I went to bed last night thinking, I hope I get to do a emergency podcast Monday morning that he's fired. And again, I know it's cynical, right? This is a man who just lost his job, but he's getting paid a lot of money. He knows what business he's in. He'll be okay. I think for this particular instance, though, man, I have never been happier to record a podcast for this iteration of the Saints. Because, man, it's about time. Curse says, sweet victory, yeah. Chosen Fit says, let's go. Tariq says, man, you know what? I hope everything works out for Bryce Young now. Well, no, I hope it doesn't, in the sense that for the Panthers, like, if he has success elsewhere, great. But not with Carolina, just because division rival. But kudos to Bryce Young. He slammed the door shut on this horrible, horrible run for the New Orleans Saints. Matthew says, woohoo, goodbye, and good riddance. I really thought we're going to ride with him until the end of the season. I didn't think so. I really thought yesterday that was it. When you lose to Carolina, there's nowhere you can run, nowhere you can hide. Reality's coming for you. And I think for New Orleans, they went into that game, and I don't blame them because Carolina's a bad team. They went into that game assuming they were going to win. And man, oh man, do you believe it? So I think for New Orleans, they knew on that flight going back home, changes were going to be made. They had to. There's no way they didn't. Apple Tart says, today is a happy day, although I was kind of looking forward to a really good first pick next year. Guys, I still think they're going to get a really good first pick. It's not a good football team. And even if, let's say, with Rizzy now, they win the games against the bad teams, right? Who are the bad teams on the schedule? The bad teams are the Browns, the Giants, and the Raiders. 3 more wins. 5-12 will still get you a really good pick. A really, really good pick. So I wouldn't worry about that yet. You know, like, they're not beating the Packers. They're not beating the Commanders. They're not beating the Rams. And they're probably not beating the Buccaneers. Maybe they beat the Falcons this weekend off of just emotion and being inspired about firing the head coach and feeling relieved. So that is probably possible. But I think, you know, pick-wise, they're still going to be in a good spot, guys. I wouldn't be worried about the draft pick. The Saints will be sitting pretty come January when you look at that draft order. Jordan says, God is good. God is great. Matthew says, I'm just happy that ownership isn't too disconnected with reality. Yeah, I think that's a big thing, right? We're all worried about that. Do the Saints actually feel like they can read the room? And you know what? They did a good job today. This was the first time in a long time that they got a grip of reality and said, you know what? How can we make these players go out there and keep playing? Like I said, guys, keep putting your comments in, and we'll keep going through them. And I also encourage you guys, if you enjoy our content, to like the video. Really, really helps us out, and I would appreciate it. Going to keep it rolling here with Isaac says, now get rid of Mickey Mouse Loomis. We'll never forgive him for drafting Davenport in 2018. Apple Tart says, Loomis next, please. Yeah, I'm curious to see what happens with Mickey. Like, he's never going to be fired. I hope people realize that. Mickey Loomis is part of, like, de facto ownership. Do they move him, though? Can they move him to a presidential role and bring in an extra football mind who can do a better job of drafting? Like, I think that would be the question. But they're not going to fire him. Like, whether he should or shouldn't is a different discussion, but just knowing how the Saints operate, knowing how close he is to the Benson family, I don't see him being moved. Shane O'Mac says, thank you, Gail, for doing the right thing. The first step to solving any problem is admitting you have one. There is hope now. Kerry says, best Monday since February 2010. Who dat? Hayden says, we actually did it, Chris. I can't believe it. Now I just need us to keep losing, but I feel like we know how this goes. We'll win 6 to 7 random games on the year and ruin draft stock. In other years, I would agree, Hayden, but here's the reality for the Saints. This defense is slow and old. Interim coach doesn't always solve the problems, and the offense is going to be really, really hampered. No Shaheed for the rest of the year. Chris Olave is going to miss time. He might miss the rest of the season. I mean, I personally don't think Chris Olave should play again this season because, you know, what is the point? Like, the man has had 2 concussions in the span of 3 weeks. There's no reason for him to come back now with the way the season's gone. So I still think they're going to keep losing games. They might win Sunday. I might pick them to win Sunday, but this team is not going to win a lot of games. I'll tell you that much. And it's not even a knock on Rizzy. I think Rizzy's a hell of a dude, and I'm glad he's going to get this opportunity. He's earned it. But I just don't think this roster is that good. So I wouldn't worry about that. Got a super chat here from Mello says, who do you think we should get first out of the draft? I mean, it's, you know, based on where they're picking. If they were picking top 3 and they don't like the quarterbacks, I'm trying to get Travis Hunter. I think Travis Hunter would bring that Reggie Bush energy to New Orleans, where you get such an exciting prospect that everyone's gravitating towards him. But, you know, if you really like one of these quarterbacks, if you like Shedeur Sanders, if you like Cam Ward, I'm a big believer if you like the quarterback, you take the quarterback, because you never know if you're going to be picking that high again. We'll get there. We'll cross that bridge when we get there, whether the Saints will like these quarterbacks, but that's where I'm at. Obviously, you can never hate in going best available. But I think best available by far is you're looking at guys like Travis Hunter, I mean, Mason Graham from Michigan's up there. I don't trust the Saints drafting D-line, though. If I had it my way, the Saints would get Travis Hunter. That would be my dream scenario, you know? Got another super chat here from Sniper. Thank you so much for the support. Greatly appreciate it, guys. You guys have been absolutely crushing it with super chats the last couple days, and I genuinely appreciate it. Gonna keep it rolling here. Cooler Beat says, what a wonderful Monday, Saints fans. I love y'all. Tilo Max says, can we also get rid of Carr now, please? You know, it's funny, the way the team has operated and the way the fan base feels about Derek Carr feels like two different things. I don't think Derek Carr is a good quarterback. I think Derek Carr has proven more times than not that he's just not good enough. I don't know if they'll bench him, though, or get rid of him right now because, I mean, what's the alternative? I think you probably just ride it out with him this season. But he's not good enough to elevate this team anyway, so I'm not worried about them winning any meaningless games. Sniper with a super chat says, DA should have been fired when he apologized to Atlanta. Couldn't agree more. And I thought that would be the turning point, right? Because the locker room was like, we're not fucking apologizing. We just beat the Falcons. You don't apologize for that. And yet, the Saints had a meeting at the end of the year where they were pretty much told, you adapt to this culture or you get the fuck out of New Orleans. And I couldn't believe that the players were told that as opposed to the coach who apologized to their best and biggest rival. That is where you lost me. I was lost already with DA. I wanted him fired God knows how many times. If you search up my tweets, I probably am considered a bot on Twitter because I've tweeted a million times, fire Dennis Allen. But I agree with you. He should have been gone the minute he apologized to Atlanta. The only reason he wasn't is because I won a bunch of meaningless football games, and the Saints put stock in that for some stupid reason. But I don't understand why. But you're absolutely right, and I genuinely appreciate that comment. Hayden says, Shane, this is not Gale. Gale doesn't make any football decisions with the team. Guys, I think this was Gale. I'm going to be honest. I think this was Gale coming from the top down saying, hey, we got to get rid of this guy. Also, just a side note, Michael Thomas just tweeted, there it goes, regarding Dennis Allen. So, MT is a Saints fan above all else. Whodat712 says, bro, everything is right in the world. What a beautiful Monday morning. Bye, Felicia. Yeah, bye, Felicia is right. Instinctive 30 says, wait until he goes to Denver. Denver's defense is cooking without him. I don't know, man. I don't know. Jerry G says, a new day is coming. Cody says, who dat? Solo says, let's go. Ed says, what a great way to start the week. Matthew says, sometimes you got to pop out and show them. Who would have known those would be Dennis Allen's famous last words? First words are, what's a metaphor? Last words, sometimes you got to pop out and show them. Proxy Agony says, I'm celebrating Victory Monday. Yeah, this is a Victory Monday for us. Jacob says, watch us beat the Falcons this week now. I'm cool with that. I don't care. Fuck Atlanta. Fuck the Falcons. I'm rooting for the Saints to win that game, man, as we all should, you know? Got a super chat here from Brian. Brian, thank you so much for the support. Brian Russell says, you do notice when the Pels took Loomis out of the equation, they started winning. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm not disagreeing with that. And I've said, like, this firing Dennis Allen does not solve the whole problem. If it was as simple as Dennis Allen being the only problem, I'd probably be doing this stream shirtless right now, waving my shirt in the air like a rally towel because I'd be like, oh, the Saints are saved. Dennis Allen is a problem. I think he's more of a symptom to the problem than the main problem. I think the main problem is the Saints would not accept that after you lost Sean Payton and Drew Brees, it was time to rebuild. And instead, they said, no. We can do this without them. You can't. You can't. You got to get different guys in the building and figure this shit out. So getting rid of, DA is a start. But what happens with the front office? Why are there no consequences to them whiffing on draft picks? I just talked about this with Jordy Holtberg before. The Saints had a draft class in 2023 where they burnt a second-round pick on Isaiah Foskey and they burnt a third-round pick on Kendra Miller. Those picks are supposed to be guys that make huge impacts for your team. I mean, look at Alontae Taylor, who's a fucking baller. Alontae Taylor was a second-round pick. That's what you want out of a second-round pick. Not Isaiah Foskey, who can't see the field. And the only time I ever see Isaiah Foskey is at the casino. I mean, that's it. Jamal says, I'm still not confident because Mickey's running it. I mean, you're not alone there. You're not alone at all. You are not alone at all in that thought. So I think that it's something where the Saints are going to have to prove to their fans that they can fix this. This is a start, but they got so much more to go. I mean, you got to figure out the front office. You got to figure out your cap situation. You got to figure out the quarterback. You got to figure out the aging defense. There's a lot of problems here. Trey Gift says, Christmas came early, baby. Red Joseph says, this era was a lazy Susan of shit sandwiches. Can't tune in, but thanks for making these years bearable, Chris. I'm trying, guys. I'm trying out here. I appreciate that, though, man. Caden says, who do you think steps in now? I mean, they said it before. It was Rizzy. That was my guess, and it's been confirmed. Michael says, now be sellers for draft capital. I agree. I agree. There's no other way for, the Saints to fix this. And if you want to continue proving that you've really, really changed your ways and you're accepting what you are right now as an organization, go be a seller at the deadline. Go get rid of Lattimore as much as he'll pain us, because Lattimore is one of our OGs. We love Lattimore. Go get rid of him. Go let him go play for a contender. Get some draft compensation back. I don't think you could get anything for Chase Young, but if anyone's willing to throw a 7th-round pick, trade him for a 7th-round pick. You're not keeping him anyway. He's on an expiring contract. So I agree. It's time to be a seller. And as Huda Rivas says right here, trading aging assets and reset the clock on the books. I think that is what you can do. Be aggressive, make trades, and go do your thing. Lala says, end of an era. Isn't that right? Caden says, Sean is still a top 5 corner. What you mean? Sean's great. Marshawn Lattimore's a great player. He's not in the timeline now for the Saints to have success. It just doesn't line up. So I hope for New Orleans' sake, they make a move and they can finally accept where they're at. And I hope for Lattimore's sake, he gets to go play somewhere where he can contend. Cedric says, finally, now let the fire sale begin before the trade deadline. Who Dat Nation? This is the start of the rebuild. I hope so. Ezekiel says, Dennis the Menace. Yeah, Dennis the Menace is gone. Now they got to figure out if they can make the other changes that are necessary. But Dennis the Menace is gone. Appletart says, I'm all for a fire sale here. Obviously, there are a couple players we want to keep and build on, but get rid of everyone else. Start from scratch. TMB says, Sanders 2025 QB. Yeah, we'll see, man. I mean, Shador might be the guy. Abraham says, Chris, I can't believe it. They did it. I mean, yeah, I thought today was the day, though. I really thought today was the day. I just didn't know what time they were going to do it. And I knew when I tweeted Dennis Allen still the head coach of the Saints, what an unserious franchise. I put that up there waiting for that to get debunked. And I'm glad that it is. So this is probably the best that we have felt today as Saints fans. And isn't that sad, right? The best we've felt in the last 3 years is when the coach gets fired. Got a super chat here from Hill Mendoza. Thank you so much for the support. Says someone woke up Gail Benson from the crib, shook the cobwebs, and she got to work immediately. Mickey Mouse Loomis, yo lame self is next. Look, guys, I don't disagree with the criticism towards Loomis. I think it's all warranted. I don't know if they're going to move him, though. I don't. I wonder if his role is just kind of safe forever. So, I agree with you guys, but I don't know. I will give credit to Gail Benson, though. From all reports that have come out right now, Gail was kind of the one who really set this into motion, heard the players, heard the complaints, and said, you know what? Enough's enough. Well, to continue this trend of never firing head coaches for what? For what? What are those 7-8 weeks going to do for you? You're going to feel better about it? The guy's still going to get fired anyway. So you do it now. You tell your players that you hear their concerns and you roll from there. So I think that's what the move had to be made. And I give credit to the Saints for making the move. Lamero says, as of right now, who's your preferred realistic QB1 next year? I mean, I've watched more Shador than Cam Ward, so I don't feel like it's a fair assessment for me to say Shador's better than Cam Ward. But, I mean, I wouldn't mind if they get a young quarterback in there. I think for us Saints fans, a young quarterback's one of the few things that gives you hope, that gives you something to really feel good about with the franchise. Now, it all goes to shit if they turn into be a bad quarterback, but, for that moment when you take them, you feel like the franchise has a pulse. So, we'll see. Casey says, Sean Payton has not beat any quality team this year. He hasn't won a ring since Obama. It's time to think different. I'm okay with that. I've been a big proponent of move on from that era. Now, I still think Sean's a good coach, but move on from this era with the Saints where, man, what are you doing right now that's going to lead towards winning football games? If you go to Aaron Glenn, and again, I love Aaron Glenn. I think he's an awesome dude. I would be stunned if he ends up being the head coach for this team that takes him to that next level. I think you need new ideas. So we'll see where they go, but I think that's imperative. TMB says Loomis going to president role, Harley for GM. Maybe. It's possible. I do think if they move on from Loomis, Kai Harley would be the guy at GM for sure. Tobias says, I don't want to celebrate anyone getting fired, but he did it to himself, and I'm excited about the future. Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you there. And like I said, I'm not a big proponent in celebrating people getting fired because they're all human at the end of the day, and this sucks, but It's a results business, and they know that. And for the Saints, you can't lose 7 games in a row and not make a change. Something had to happen, and today was the day. And I'm glad the Saints actually did that. I think the worst thing they could have done was go into the Dome Sunday against the Falcons and get their shit kicked all over the town and have no answer. So I think that definitely is a good thing for them. Your bro says they need to pick up Bill Belichick. I don't know about that. I'm a little bit soured on Bill Belichick, in my opinion. Vibe in Paradise says, name the last defensive head coach to win the Super Bowl, not named Bill. That's a great question, actually. Now I got it. Now my head is so mush right now over the last couple of Super Bowl champions that I got to go back over here and pull it up. But it can't be great, right? Who is the last? I'm going through it. It's got to be Pete Carroll. Yeah, so Pete Carroll, last defensive head coach. When was that, 2013 or 2014? So it's definitely tough to be a defensive coach and be considered a Super Bowl contender. Got a super chat here from Vibe in Paradise. Thank you so much for the support. It says, no defensive head coach, copycat league. Look at Spags and read. Name the last defensive head coach to win a Super Bowl, not named Bill, let alone make it. Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. And I think what you want as a defensive coordinator is a guy like a Robert Saleh or now Dennis Allen, right? Because Dennis Allen's never getting another head coaching job. Those are the guys you want at defensive coordinator, the ones that you don't have to worry about losing, that there's that job security there. And Spags is the perfect example. I'm so glad you brought that up. Spags failed as a head coach. He failed in New Orleans when he didn't have enough pieces at the DC. But in Kansas City, where Andy Reid's running the show and they have defensive talent, Spags gets to be the star of the show at times. Like the Kansas City defense is what wins them games. And it might be the reason they win a third straight Super Bowl if that happens. So I do agree. That is what you want. You want an offensive-minded head coach with a defensive coordinator that you're not worried about getting head coaching jobs or leaving. And Spags is the perfect example. Dennis Allen might eventually become that perfect example too, depending on where he lands on his feet. Robert Saleh will definitely be one of those guys. Robert Saleh is a great defensive coordinator. So I think that's what you want. We'll just see if that's where the Saints end up going in that direction. Casey says, Lincoln Riley, ? I would stay 20 miles away from Lincoln Riley. I am not a Lincoln Riley guy. I think Lincoln Riley is a fraud. I don't think he's a good coach. I think he's good at developing quarterbacks. Everything else he does, in my opinion, is subpar. And I know USC is not the most talented team in the world right now, but I believe they're 4-5? I mean, that is not good enough. That's not good enough for me. Jeremy says we're an old team, not much to be excited about. Yeah, you're not wrong. This is just something they needed to do. Justin said, I would love Vrabel. Apple Tart says, Chris, how do you feel about our draft perspective next offseason? We'll see where they land, and we'll see if they change their approach. I do think they need to change their approach, though. I think for this team, if they keep the same front office, like they don't make any tweaks in that department, how can I trust them? Their 2023 draft is already a complete bust. Already a complete bust. Your second and third round picks, those are guys that are premium picks. They're useless. Kendrick Miller's always hurt. Isaiah Foskey doesn't see the field. Doesn't see the field at all. So got to make a change there. Rune says, who will be expected to be traded at the deadline? I think the main one that we'll talk about is, got to be Marshawn Lattimore. Got to be Marshawn Lattimore. So I think that is that is what they should do. Get rid of Lattimore, let him go to contender. Maybe ask if anyone wants Chase Young, but that's it. You really don't have a lot of pieces. You don't got a lot there. Sergio says, best day of my life. Abraham says they desperately need to use this as an opportunity to get a head coach that's ready to implement a new program and develop a modern offense. I would be fine with that. Adrian Slayton says, Lions OC ? Yeah, Ben Johnson would be a great candidate for them. I just don't think Ben will go there. But money does talk, and maybe the Saints are willing to kind of break open that checkbook and give him what he wants and say, hey, you pick your quarterback in the draft and you give him the pieces. But Ben Johnson, to me, would be the number one candidate. I just don't think he's the most realistic candidate for this team. Ed says, eat Derek Carr's contract. We're not going to be good next year anyway. I agree on that wholeheartedly. I don't want to see Derek Carr as their quarterback next year at all, under any circumstance. And look, man, no personal beef with Derek Carr. I just can't do this shit anymore. I don't want to watch him as the quarterback. I think he's unaccountable. I think he does all this preachy, rah-rah bullshit in the press conference, come across like he's a great guy. And maybe he is a great guy off the field. But on the field, that's not the leader that this team needs. a guy like Alvin Kamara, that's the leader this team needs, not Derek Carr. So I'd be cool with them getting rid of them. And, Jeremy asked a great question. I wonder how Carr feels. This is the second time Derek Carr has been on a team that's fired Dennis Allen. History has a weird way of repeating itself, doesn't it? Christian says Saints have a ton of issues to fix post-DA, but if we can hit on the franchise quarterback and coach, it doesn't take long to contend after being rock bottom. Look at the Texans and Commanders. Great examples. I mean, Texans and Commanders, Texans overnight fixed that thing. Commanders, 7-2. 7-2. They're going to be a buyer at the deadline. I mean, you bring in Jaden. Dan Quinn's done a good job of establishing culture, and shit's worked out, man. Shit's worked out for that team. Proxy Agony says, Chris, what do you think about Joe Brady? I think Joe Brady's done a good job, but Joe Brady also has Josh Allen. I think, there's no Josh Allen coming through that door for the Saints. So, again, I think Joe Brady's been great this year. They've done a really good job, but it's a lot easier to coach an offense when Josh Allen's your quarterback. Matthew says, drafting Shedeur and hiring Prime would be so fun. It'd be fun. Would it be a train wreck? Maybe. It would be fun. I can't deny that. There's no doubt about it. Apple Tart says, Cam Jordan can go. I love the guy, but he's washed. Giovanni says, I like to say it's more like a domino effect. So the first domino has fallen. I agree on that 1,000%. 1,000%. Justin says, question, when the Saints hired Sean Payton, was he a known quantity or was he a surprise hire? I mean, Sean was a little bit out there of a hire, I would say. I don't think Sean, maybe in today's era, would be considered like that hot shot candidate, but it was a risk. It was a calculated, it was a risk for sure. I don't think hiring Sean Payton was ever considered a sure thing. And I mean, think of Sean's history, right? Work with the Giants, work with the Cowboys. And yeah, he had success in those assistant roles, but it was a leap of faith, I would say, for sure. Jeremy says, is Marshawn getting moved this week? My guess is yes. My guess is yes. Justin Formu said, so did Mickey finally decide to stop looking beyond the results? I would say so. Shane O'Mac says the Kamara something else comment really stood out yesterday. Yeah, he mentioned a bunch of players they got confidence in. And then he said, maybe it's not having confidence in something else. It doesn't take a genius to understand what he said. He was talking about the coaching staff. So I think for them, when guys like Alvin go out there and make those comments, you got to make a change. Jordan says, so what happens to Carr since there's no DA? Great question. I mean, I'm getting rid of Carr after this year. I'm getting rid of Derek Carr. I don't think Derek Carr's worth it. I think there's baggage that comes with Derek Carr. I would get rid of him. I'd definitely get rid of him. Justin says, a little off topic, but who do you think gets traded by tomorrow? I don't think that's off topic at all. As I mentioned before, Marshawn Lattimore and Chase Young would be the guys that you're probably looking at. Rory says the problem with this team goes beyond just a head coach. Terrible drafting since 2017 and awful cap management. Extending Jordan, letting Hendrickson and Trey Hendrickson go. So many bad decisions have led to this. I think you're 1,000% correct, Rory. Sean says, Cliff Kingsbury, question mark. I don't know. Cliff's an interesting case, right? He's had one good season with the Cardinals, and then everything went to shit. And he's been great this year, but, Jaden's been special. Can he fix? That's the problem, right? Whoever takes the Saints coaching job, guys, they need to be able to handle a shitstorm because that is what you're entering. And it's not me being rude. You are entering a team with a bad salary cap situation, with no franchise quarterback, with an aging defense. Whoever goes in there has to be able to deal with the lumps and adjust. The current guy they had wasn't able to do that, wasn't capable. So I think Cliff Kingsbury, while he's having success, I don't think Cliff would be able to handle that in New Orleans. I really don't. Frog said, who would be your top 3 head coach options? Ben Johnson obviously would be an ideal one for me. I'm going to keep saying Liam Cohen. I like his success. Like, he's having success everywhere he goes. Now, I don't think Liam Cohen's going to get the job, but I think Liam's done a good job. And I know the Saints are going to consider Aaron Glenn, so it's a debate of whether you rather have Aaron Glenn or Mike Vrabel. I think I'd rather have Mike Vrabel than Aaron Glenn, but I mean, I guess you could put them as the third option tied. Got a super chat here from Lamiro. Thank you so much for the support. Says, I think we need to scrap the entire QB room. I know Rattler is young, but he was a 5th-round pick for a reason. Well, you could keep Rattler or Haener in the building. Like, they're not costing you anything. But I agree with your point of you got to change things up at quarterback. Do not go into next season with the same exact quarterback room. Honestly, I would scrap this room entirely. Maybe keep Jake Haener or Rattler. Keep one of the two, whichever one you feel like is a good, competent backup and can compete. Maybe keep both. They're inexpensive. But I am not keeping Derek Carr for next season. I am not. I'll tweet out this after I'm done with this show. I am not keeping Derek Carr. I'm not. He's got to go. So I don't disagree with you. I think maybe getting rid of him and moving on is a smart decision. XX392 Smurf says, rejoice, brothers and sisters. JD Lee says, hope we trade Lattimore and Young now. Love them as players, but we need to build draft capital. They do. Alpha Sports says, trade Laddie to KC or Baltimore. I kind of think that's where it goes. Pelicans Noah says, my prayers have been answered. Thank you, Gail Benson. Uncle Hudat says, I thought this day would never come. DA is gone. Michael says, hate to hear this, but I think we need to trade our first round pick because we get more picks for the future. One pick's not going to save this team. Depends where they are, you know? And depends if they like a quarterback. You can't trade it if you like a quarterback. Sergio with the super chat. Sergio, thank you so much for the support. Says, man, receiver depth looking ass with Olave's future on the line. Hopefully they draft someone. We just need playmakers. 1,000% agree. Think about the receiver room right now. Olave's future a little bit up in the air. Rashid Shaheed's going to come off knee surgery. And then after those two, and those two I really like. I really, really like Olave and Shaheed, although there are injury concerns now. One of them being a long-term health thing. Bub Memes, we don't know. I think Bub Memes could be a player, but we don't know. But let's include Bub in there, right? Cedric Wilson, no. Equinemius St. Brown, God, no. Mason Tipton, no. Tight end room is bad. They need another running back. Like, this offense needs playmakers. So I hope this draft that they do is all offense. But my concern is if they do hire Aaron Glenn, they're going to go all defense. And don't get me wrong, the defense is going to need help now because that defense is old as shit. Old at linebacker, old at defensive line, old at safety. So outside of cornerback, I don't love that defense. But their best thing would be to go all offense in the draft, man. All offense. Joshua says apparently Gale did it. Mickey didn't want to fire midseason. Yeah, I'm telling you guys, Gale made the call. It was Gale. So if we want to rip Gale for a lot of things, and boy knows we have, I'll give her credit for waking up today and saying, you know what? We gotta get rid of this coach. Sean says, need a coach with a strong personality. Couldn't agree more. Jerry says, great way to start the week. Also agree with that, Jerry. Let's keep it rolling here. Turtman says, 49ers fan here. Does Chase Young even play? Is he any good for y'all? Does he play? Yes. Is he any good for us? No. That'll be the answer. He does play, though, but he's not good for them. Alpha Sports says, true, this was a Loomis decision. This would have happened to Sean Payton if he didn't turn the team around in 2017. Fair enough. Laker Show says, been feeling like a cliffhanger since yesterday. Glad it was worth the wait. Yeah, the vibe was different. I was listening. I probably stayed up till 1 a.m. listening to every Saints content creator's thoughts on what was going on. I listened to Ross Jackson, John Hendricks, Nick Underhill, Mike Triplett, Adam and Ryan from the Saints Block Party podcast. I listened to Matt Moscona. I listened to Hold the Mayo. I don't know what I didn't listen to. Honestly, last night I legitimately listened to every Saints content creator that I enjoy listening to. And you could just tell it's different. Like when you lose the 6 games in a row, we're all frustrated, but you're all like, he might just come back. Yesterday, it felt different. And I'm glad that the Saints honestly validated those feelings by getting him the fuck out of here. Juke Nukem says, we need Bill Belichick. I don't know about that. Shannon Max says, can we trade for Sean Payton? Jeff Duncan swears Payton wanted to return before he chose Denver. Saints said, no shot that's happening. I mean, Saints are in a QB purgatory spot. And look, Bo Nix hasn't been great, but Bo Nix has been promising. And Sean got his guy that he wanted. So Sean's not coming back. We got to kind of get away from that, Eddie says, hilarious how Aints think this fixes their team. You're $80 million over the cap. No, this doesn't fix the team. But keeping Dennis Allen wasn't fixing anything. That would just make it worse. And that's the whole point. Lamiro with another super chat. Thank you so much for the support. Says best defensive player is 35. That is a problem. Truthfully, guys, I think the way this defense is shifting, I think their best players are no longer the guys that we thought they were. I mean, Lattimore is their best player, but he's not. I don't consider him almost like part of the team at the moment because he's not playing. And I do believe he's probably going to get traded. So I think for me, best players on defense, I'm thinking Alontae Taylor. He's been sensational. I'm thinking Pete Werner. He's been pretty good. And I mean, Carl Granderson was playing good at the start of the season, hasn't done much, but those are probably the two that I'm building towards. The rest are old and declining, and I think that's the problem. Lattimore's still a stud, but I kind of think Lattimore gets traded before tomorrow. So that's where I'm at. Carl says, praise the Lord. Please, tiny 8-pound Jesus, get rid of Loomis next. Go get Vrabel. Well, Wesley says, I know this doesn't fix a damn thing, But God, it feels good. You're right. Corey says, go get Kirby Smart. For what? For what? They're going to rack up a bunch of arrests. I mean, no knock on Kirby Smart. The man wins national championships. But God damn it, every other day I see a Georgia player get arrested for like reckless driving. Cool Sports Rhyme says, about time, Chris. Give me Ben Johnson or offer Cliff Kingsbury a bunch of money. I'm a little nervous about Cliff Kingsbury. I don't know if he would be great in this spot. I'm a little nervous about that. Jordan says, do you move Lattimore at the deadline? I would. Again, I think Rico Payton and Kool-Aid McKinstry will be healthy for next week. So I would like the Saints to play those young guys. Obviously, Alante is going to keep playing and doing his thing. He's a great player. I think you move Lattimore. And the reason I say that is you're probably moving Lattimore after this year anyway. Why not move him now? So that's kind of my thought process on that. Jason says, I had my notifications on, and when I saw he was fired, I had to get a shot of Hennessy. I haven't drank in 4 years. Hell yeah. I don't blame you. Jason, I thought about taking a shot too, man. K-Rosie88 says, listen, Mickey needs to go too, but we know that's not happening, but we need an offensive head coach. I don't believe in Clinton. Yeah, I don't think Kubiak's any good, personally. Glenn says, Thanksgiving finally came to get rid of that turkey. Charlie says, everyone besides Kamara and Olave should be on the table. I mean, I'm not moving Alante Taylor. Pete Werner obviously got an extension. So there's other players, but I get your point. Offensively, those guys you don't move. Wesley says, I need Carr bench now, especially after he hung out Chris Olave. Roll with Heener or Rattler and see if they show you something. I'm not against that, man. I actually would like to see one of those young guys play when Eric McCoy's in. A little bit better of an offensive line, a little bit more structure. How do they play? I'm just so over Derek Carr. I know he's the best option right now because he's an 11-year vet. The other guys are young players, but I'm so over Derek Carr. Pelicans Noah says, DA popped out of New Orleans because the boot state has kicked your ass out. Riot 2.0 says, Aaron Glenn. Forrest says they need to draft a QB first round. I hate to say the word tank, but that's really what they need to do. Shazam says, no, why would we get rid of him? He's our only hope in the secondary. Did y'all not see the game yesterday? It's not about that. I agree with you. He's their best cornerback. There's no doubt about it. I love Lattimore. Truthfully, Lattimore's one of my favorite players I've watched, and I still think Lattimore's a damn stud. I just don't think he's part of the future, right? He's not part of this program moving forward. So, you trade him now while you still get something in return. That's the way I view it. It's not an indictment on Lattimore. I think Lattimore's excellent. I also think Lattimore deserves a chance to play on a contender. So that's where I'm at. Brian Russell with a super chat. Thank you so much for the support. Brian says they should have paid Caden Ellis. Zach Bond. Zach Bond has been the heart and soul of the Eagles defense. I cannot believe that is a sentence coming out of my mouth. But Zach Bond has been the heart and soul of the Philadelphia Eagles on defense. I mean, go search how Eagles fans feel about Zach Bond. I mean, they love that dude. They want him to get a lifetime extension. So the Saints have had a problem when it comes to developing certain guys. There's no question about it. Keep it going here. One Smoke says, Mike Vrabel's a winner, period. He can get the best out of a mid-roster, and it's what we need. It's possible, man. I mean, look, Vrabel took the Titans. It's funny. So Vrabel gets knocked as he got fired. Titans collapsed. The Titans collapsed after they got rid of A.J. Brown, which they shouldn't have, and their O-line wasn't good enough to block for Derrick Henry, where go look at Derrick Henry now. Derrick Henry's still doing his damn thing. He's already got over 1,000 rushing yards. So I'm not saying Vrabel has to be the pick, but if Vrabel was the pick, I wouldn't be mad about it at all. I think Vrabel, to Big Smokey's comment here, I mean, the fucking Titans with Ryan Tannehill made the AFC Championship game, So I think that he is a culture builder for sure. Evan says, one of my friends said this happened 3 years too late when you have a stupid fucking bitch running this team. Isn't honesty something? RG Scott 3X with the super chat. Thank you so much for the support. Says, what are the chances the interim benches Carr for the rest of the season? I think they're going to play Carr for at least the next couple of games. I think if Carr were to get benched, I don't think it's an interim coach decision. I think that would be a top-down decision and say, man, I think that for me, this is a decision where maybe ownership or front office steps in and says, hey, can we see what these young quarterbacks can do in the last 3-4 games of the season? We know Derek Carr, what he is. I think that's what would have to happen. I don't think Rizzi's going to make that move. I don't know if Rizzi would have the power to make that move. But I know if the Saints continue to struggle and Carr continues to be a problem, I think that, from the ownership, front office, someone will come down and say, hey, let's make a move here. Jack says, where's your Bryce Young jersey, Chris? I got to shake Bryce Young's hand, man. I got to shake his hand for what he did. I have to. Goonie300 says Mike Tomlin won a Super Bowl as defense coach. Yeah, Mike Tomlin and Pete Carroll are the two, and Bill Belichick. And outside of that, and those are all great, great, great coaches. And, Belichick, Hall of Famer. Pete Carroll should, in my opinion, be a Hall of Famer. Mike Tomlin will be a Hall of Famer. So, those are the kind of exceptions to the rule right now. Saint for Life says Saints have to get younger and cheaper fast. Draft capital is the only way for this to happen. Most of these contracts can't be traded. Chase Young, Lattimore, Olave, and a few others that can be traded. They do have to get younger and cheaper. I can't deny that. They got to start hitting on draft picks, guys. That's the priority. Got to hit on draft picks. Vincent says bring in Vrabel. I would not mind them going to Vrabel. Juke Nukem says Belichick loves New Orleans, though he's been coming in to visit and stays in the French Quarter with his new young broad. She loves it, and he loves it here in the Quarter. I mean, that's great. I hope Bill Belichick's having the time of his life with his 24-year-old girlfriend. But I don't know if the Saints, who need to change, should bring in a coach who, how many more years left? I want a guy who's going to be the Saints coach for the next 10, 15 years. That's just how I feel. Cam the Maker says Lincoln Riley has ruined 2 college football programs. Why would we bring him to New Orleans? Yeah, I don't get that. I'm sorry. And that's not a knock, right? Like, I commend everyone for suggestions. I love when you guys put in your comments, but I don't think Lincoln Riley, I don't even know if he's a good college football coach right now. At least the way things are currently constructed. Don't think he would be cut out for New Orleans. Dante says Deion Sanders and Shador packaged to New Orleans. One Smoke says Ben Johnson's going to a big market team. I could see Ben Johnson going to the Bears. That's kind of where I think he goes. And I guess that fixes it, right? RG Scott 3X says, ho, 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 Merry Who Dat Christmas. Second best thing since the Super Bowl. Me Monk says, would anyone want Mario Davis? Not sure. I'm not sure. I don't think they would move him, though. Sergio with another super chat says, Mickey's still defending DA in the official Saints news release. Yeah, I'll read that. So I'll read that for you guys if you've missed it. Here's the news release from Mickey Loomis. He said, DA is an excellent coach. This season, we've had an avalanche of injuries. It took its toll. DA's never offered excuses. He fought for this organization and this team, and this is what makes today disappointing. Dennis has been an integral part of this organization's success for the better part of 20 years. He will be missed. I mean, really? All right. I guess the Saints, you know what? You do that stuff because you want to show other coaches you're a first-class organization. You don't take shots, but really? Really, Dennis Allen's been an integral part of them. I mean, yeah, as a defensive coordinator, he's also been an integral part of this organization struggling the last 3 years. So, I mean, and also DA's never offered excuses. DA throws everyone under the fucking bus. He's thrown Kubiak under the bus. He's thrown the injuries under the bus. He's thrown Jameis Winston under the bus. He's thrown his defense under the bus. I mean, come on. Doesn't make excuses. At least be honest, Let's be honest, Juan says Kubiak could be gone after one season. I think so. I don't think Kubiak's any good, guys. That's just my opinion, LOL, Carr's contract has a $50 million dead cap. How are you media and you don't know that? Dude, the Broncos got rid of Russell Wilson and are paying a shit ton of money to Russell Wilson for the next 2 years just because sometimes it's not worth having that guy on the roster if that's the guy you don't want. So, again, money is not always the end-all, be-all. If money was, the Saints would be keeping Dennis Allen as their coach right now and just riding it out till that contract's over. Dark Knight says, we don't need a nice guy on the field. We need a dog on the field. I agree with that. Jay Hoodie says, trade all the older guys that still have something in the tank, a.k.a. Kamara, Davis, Lattimore, and Matthew. I don't think those are getting traded. I think Lattimore's getting traded. The other 3, I don't think they're going anywhere. Alpha Sports says, y'all need to stop. Vrabel was only as good as Derrick Henry was. When he was stopped or went down, the Titans were nothing. Jose says, I've never been too invested in the top prospects because the Saints haven't drafted top 5 in a while. I'm sort of excited. It feels weird. Yeah, I mean, it's new territory. It's new territory for this team. I mean, not unfamiliar, but it's new for the last 20 years. Saint for Life says, Saints cap situation is horrible and old roster. Bad drafts will have a hard time landing Ben Johnson. I agree with you. No Tomato and Gumbo says, hey, Chris, do you think Gail will be more involved in future decisions now that she pushed the firing? No. I think, and that's what makes a good owner, by the way. A good owner is able to put the hammer down when necessary and step back when necessary. And I don't think Gail will have any say in, fixing this roster. But when you hear the complaints, you got to go out there and make a move, and she did that. Cody said, if somebody offered a 6th or 7th round for Olave, would you take it? Absolutely not. You kidding me? Absolutely not. Keep it rolling. BP says we need to hire Mickey as well. It's time for fresh eyes and fresh ideas. I don't think they'll move him, but if he moves to like presidential role and you bring in an actual GM, then I would be cool with that because that at least counts as a new person in the building, you know? That's what I would want. To Milton's point, Loomis is grandfathered in. He's not going anywhere. I agree with that. Garrison says we need a coach that guys are willing to play for and change the culture completely. I agree. And it sounds so simple, right? Get a coach that players want to play for. But listen to the Saints. Every time they're asked about like the season getting out of control, how are they going to keep fighting? Every player is like, man, you know, we're fighting for each other. We're fighting for the players. But that's about it. That's about it. So, I mean, for me, I don't think that that the Saints can do worse than Dennis Allen in that department. They literally had a coach that every time they hit a losing streak, the players did not say we're fighting for the coach. They said everyone but the coach pretty much. So, you know, as simple as it sounds, I agree. You need to have someone in there that day one, guys are going to command the respect. And when you do that, you start establishing a culture. Dennis Allen, and I've always said this about him, he might be a nice guy off the football field. He's a substitute teacher on the football field. He was there to replace the main teacher, Sean Payton, who left. And anyone who's been at school knows you do not respect your substitute teacher. And you know they might be a nice guy. They might be a nice guy. But you can get away with so much shit that you couldn't get away with when the actual teacher was there. And they're going to need a grown man to come in there and kind of assert his culture and make sure that they all kind of follow in line. So I hope that's where they go with it. Will it happen? We'll see. Milton says we should notice an effort uptick because the players really respect Rizzy. Rizzy's a dog. I don't know if Rizzy is going to be the guy long-term. You know, and honestly, for the Saints, I think the best thing for them is to move on completely from everyone. But what I'll say about Rizzy, Saints played the Falcons last year. Dennis Allen, like a schmuck, apologized to the Falcons after they beat their ass. Darren Rizzy was ready to go at it with Arthur Smith when Arthur Smith was throwing a fit because Arthur Smith knew he was about to get fired. Darren Rizzy wasn't backing down. Darren Rizzy was talking that talk. Dennis Allen was the guy who decided to apologize to the Saints rival and saying, we don't do that. The Saints-Falcons rivalry is all about disrespecting each other. And they'll have a chance this weekend. So I'm glad Rizzy will be in charge for that and not Dennis Allen. Frank says they need a tough coach, a man of leadership, a winner mentality, Mike Vrabel. Alpha Sports says Kingsbury's one of those guys who were hired as a head coach and had a losing record in college, but you say Lincoln Riley would be a better head coach. I mean, look, I don't like Lincoln Riley personally. That's just me. I don't think he'll be the guy. Some more crazy says bye-bye, Dennis Allen. Ron says Mickey Loomis sucks at drafting, so nothing's going to change. I mean, that is the next move you have to make. Like I said, this is the first step, hopefully, towards salvation. But if the Saints just fire Dennis Allen and then keep things rolling the way they're operating, you didn't change anything. You changed the target for us, right? Because right now, all our energy was directed towards Dennis Allen. But the minute you fuck up this hire, all the energy comes towards Mickey Loomis and the front office and ownership. And that's why this is so important. Because you got to sell this fan base now. You got to sell this fan base on that next guy being that program builder. And if you fuck that up, there's nowhere you can run. Just like I said, there's nowhere Taysom. I read a comment and Taysom was on mine. There's nowhere Dennis Allen can run after the loss of Panthers. There's nowhere the front office can run if they fuck this higher up next, you know? K Rosie 88 says we need to come to terms with the fact that the next head coach won't be a huge splash signing. The cap situation, no quarterback, and general status of the team is not the most desirable for big name coaches. I totally agree. That's why Ben Johnson, as much as we all like Ben Johnson, I don't expect him to go to the Saints. I just don't. BP says we need an offensive-minded head coach. I don't disagree with that. Saint for Life says cutting Carr after the season. Saints have spread the cap hit over the next 2 years. Brian says Taysom to Denver, ? I would consider doing it. It would break my heart. I love Taysom Hill. Love Taysom Hill. But he is not going to be a part of the solution for this team. So I think I think that, you know, getting rid of him, if there's an offer, you do it. I don't think they'll trade him, though. Sterling says a lot of teams that fire the head coach fire the GM with them. Don't think Mrs. Benson will do that, but I think that's something that works now. Look, I don't think he's gone, if that makes sense. But could they move him from his role? Yeah, they could. I mean, the alternative would be you get fired. Fantasyland Adventure says you can tell in DA's voice in his press conference, it felt different. He sounded like he knew this game was his last chance. Yep. Yeah, you could tell. You could tell. I think that was the first time his voice was pretty shaky and felt like, hey, this is not going to work, man. I am out of here. because usually he would do the whole, can't think about that, just got to clean it up. And, they would never actually clean it up, but that's what he would say. Yesterday was, I'm fighting my ass off as long as it's in the building. So I think he knew right there. Jack says, Jeff Duncan tweeted, regardless of anything else, DA was part of the old Super Bowl run with Sean, and to give him respect, he also said, consider him Saints Hall of Fame. Do whatever the fuck he wants, as long as he's not the head coach. I don't really care anymore, That's just me. Ed says, DeMario's been average this year at best. The missed tackles and coverage have been suspect. Yeah, I think age is finally caught up with Demario Davis. I thought DeMario was becoming an ageless player with the way he's balled out the last couple of years. But, age is finally caught up. Yes, Ball Sports says, if they get a top 5 pick, I think Ben Johnson will come. It's a selling point. No doubt about it. It's a selling point. Alex said this morning, if DA didn't get fired, I'd drive 15 hours to fire his ass myself. Yeah, I mean, I think if they didn't fire him, the dome would have been filled with Falcons fans, and I think they knew that, and that's why that it took them this moment to get there. When you have the bad loss, and then you have 2 straight home games, and those home games are going to be empty, you got to make a change to tell your fans and the players, hey, we hear you. So, Montauk says, Jason's 4-year sobriety gone down the drain for a good cause. Allen, get in the boot. Hey, look, if you're going to break your sobriety, that's the way to do it, right? Dennis Allen getting fired, I don't know if there's any better cause to drink towards it. I mean, winning a Super Bowl would be better, but in this case, this is our Super Bowl for the year, sadly. They don't realize we get under the cap in 2026. Other teams' fans coming in here thinking they know shit. Yeah, I don't get why that happens. Look, I understand the Saints are a laughing stock of the NFL at this moment. So people want to see what people are talking about and crack jokes. It's fine. But get your laughs off now, because if the Saints play their cards right, they'll be back in business in a couple years from now. Space African Jesus with a super chat. Thank you so much for the support. Says end of an error. Yeah, I think that's the best way to say it. ERROR, not ERA, like you said, because this Dennis Allen hire was a mistake from day one. I think you could have made an argument that you should have fired him in his first year. I think they were like 4-9 at one point. Should have fired him. Didn't. And then last year, under 500, shouldn't have fired him. Should have fired him. Didn't. Won meaningless games. Bring him back for year 3. His career has literally mirrored itself. In Oakland, when he was with the Raiders, 4-12, got another year. 4-12, got another year. Starts off 0-4, gets fired. That third year should never happen for him. He never should have got the head coaching job anyway. If we're being real honest with ourselves, he should have never got the job. But it's kind of funny how it's all played out. And along for the ride, both times, Derek Carr somehow. So that's quite funny. Tobias says, if you brought a head coach that knows Kubiak's offense and keep him as OC, then it might help. He has no one of his own on the staff. Look, I mean, I get why people might have more, patience for Kubiak. And I get it. The offensive personnel stinks, guys. I don't know who's thriving with Mason Tipton as their wide receiver 1 and Cedric Wilson as their wide receiver 2. That is a death sentence. And if they suffer one more injury at wide receiver, they're going to ask you to play wide receiver with the way this has gone. But Kubiak doesn't adjust well. I love the run scheme. He has not shown me in critical moments that he can put together a drive that ends the game. That's just the way I feel about it. If they keep him, fine. If they get rid of him, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. That's just kind of where I'm at right now. Trevor says Nick Saban. I think Saban's having so much fun on College Game Day. There's no chance, Josiah says, yeah, definitely free Lattimore for his own good. Stop tripping about that. Yeah, I'm not worried about that, man. Keeping Lattimore does nothing but please fans and selling jerseys. He is not going to be part of the future of this team. Let him go be the part of someone's playoff run, and get some draft capital back. Trevor says, can they trade Carr this week? I mean, where the fuck are they going to trade him? I don't think McDonald's is in the market for a quarterback. If McDonald's is, then fine. You could trade Derek Carr there. But I don't know where you're trading Derek Carr. I don't know where you're trading him, who you're going for. So I think you're stuck with that man right now. Whether you guys like it or not, that's who you got. Who's going to call the defense? Justin asks. It's got to be Joe Woods. Joe Woods will call the defense. I don't know if it really matters at this point, but Joe Woods will probably call the defense. Daryl says, Carr's just so shitty, does nothing good at all. I don't agree. I don't disagree with that. Cat Terrell said, someone on the plane just yelled, Dennis Allen got fired, and then someone clapped. Yeah, that's got to be a pretty good indication there. JB says, did y'all read the statement? Sounds like Gale fired him, not Mickey. Yeah, I didn't get the sense that Mickey fired him. I got the sense that Gale made the decision. So I think we should back off a little bit, slightly on Gale about questioning her as an owner, because I think for her doing this, I think they did a good job. I think she did a really good job of coming down and getting a sense of what's going on and what change needs to be made in the building. Mickey Loomis, I don't know, man. I don't know why we needed to absolutely rave about Dennis Allen in a statement about him getting fired. The man got fired for a reason. He wasn't good. It's okay to say. Bob says, what do fans think of Aaron Glenn? I think fans like Aaron Glenn. I just think if they hire him, though, it feels like more of the same. You know, it's the James Franco same, but different, but still the same. Like, that's just how I feel. If you hire Aaron Glenn, I feel like you're telling me you know one way, the Sean Payton culture way. And I think the Saints have to get rid of that so quickly. Brian says, I'd take a third for Olave. I mean, third would be better than a sixth or seventh, you know? The thing about Olave is we have to start having the conversation because the health is a concern, but he's also due for an extension. Like, that is the second part of it. If he was in his first year of his rookie contract, you're riding this thing out and hoping he could stay healthy and you know, things go the kid's way. But he's due a massive, massive extension. Are you going to pay him and put yourself kind of where the Dolphins have with Tua? I just don't know. I don't want to do that if I'm the Saints. Super chat here from Rob. Thank you so much for the support. Says, now it's time for Gale to kick Mickey Loomis upstairs. Yeah, that's the next move I think that you got to make. Again, I don't think you're firing Mickey Loomis, but can you get Mickey Loomis to accept a different role so the Saints can finally have a new GM and a new head coach, and us fans can feel like there is a new hope? And it might not work, right? It might not work. A new hope can turn into Rise of Skywalker very quickly. But if you make that move, you are telling me that you saw what went wrong and you are willing to change it, at least trying to change it for this team. So I hope they do that. I don't know if they will, but I think that would at least give us a sign. Champion says Olave is an 1,100 to 1,300 yard receiver every year with subpar quarterback play his entire career. What did I miss here? He's also young. If you trade a guy like that, you better get a first rounder. I'd keep him, though, since he's young. I mean, I don't think you get a first rounder for him. And I get your sentiment, though. Olave is one of the few young players that's good on this team. And they don't got a lot of them. So getting rid of him would stink. I do think there is a discussion, though, that there needs to be maybe some give and take. Because you're going to have to pay him. You're going to have to pay him. And while he deserves it off talent, health is a concern. And there's no doubt about that. Takita says, can Gruden be a solution? If the Saints hire John Gruden, I will fucking scream for an hour straight. We will not have a podcast. It'll just be me screaming for an hour straight. And that's not a good thing. I do not want John Gruden anywhere near this team. I don't want anyone who has any affiliation with the Raiders on this team. Anyone affiliated with that franchise over the last 10, 15 years is nothing but a loser. And Dennis Allen is a loser. Derek Carr is a loser, and John Gruden's a loser. And I don't care how entertaining his TikTok videos are. I don't want this man coaching the Saints. I don't want any old coach coaching the Saints, you know? Too Short says trade Taysom Hill for draft capital. It's possible. Jose says, is there another good coach from the McVay coaching tree? Yeah, I mentioned two before. Liam Cohen, who's currently the Bucs OC. He worked with the Rams, also worked at Kentucky, and that's when Will Levis had his best season. And then Aubrey Pleasant, the current passing game coordinator of the Rams. I'm not saying hire them, but look into them. Look into them. You know, I think those are guys that I would at least bring in the building for an interview. Milton says, I hate to say this, but we all unfortunately need to trade Olave. After all those concussions, he'll never be the same, and it'll surely happen again. 4 in the pros, 2 in college. I'm really concerned. Yeah, I'm concerned about his long-term health. That's what I'm concerned about, you know? So we'll see. We'll see what happens. And I think that it's definitely complicated matters. Cody says if they don't trade anybody away, that will show just how serious they are about starting. If they don't trade anybody away, that will show just how maybe unserious would be the thing. I guess unserious is what you're going for. That they're about starting a tear down and rebuild. I agree. I'm a little late, but why stop the bleeding now? It would be horrific for us to win a few games when we know a huge rebuild is needed. I think you stop it now because the worst thing the Saints can have is them lose the locker room, and all of a sudden you might have to get a whole new 53 next year. I think by doing this, you show that your owner is aware of the temperature in the building. I think by doing this, you show the players that you do care about how they feel. And by doing this, you show that you do have a standard. To accept a 7-game losing streak is horrific. And I get it, guys. I want the number 1 pick just as bad as you guys want the number 1 pick. But you cannot accept a 7-game losing streak. And I also want to throw this out there. I don't think making this change is going to magically fix the Saints. The Saints are still going to be a bad team this year, guys. The Saints are still going to be picking top 5 this year. They're not good. They're not good. Maybe they win Sunday and play spoiler against the Raiders. And great. Awesome. Outside of that, I don't think that the Saints are going to really turn this season around. It might work for a game, and then that offensive line might get just whipped into shape by the Browns, and then they'll lose to the Rams, and then they'll lose to the Commanders, then they'll lose to the Packers. They're not magically fixing the season, but you had to show everyone that you know what's going on and you genuinely care about where this team's at. So that's kind of what I feel about this team. And we'll see if that ends up playing out. So I'm going to take a real quick break and then get into your comments, guys. Before I do that, I want to get a quick word from one of our sponsors, Scott Fickner.
And Jonathan Williams brings it all the way back from the 20-yard line.
What a terrific way to end the first half.
And tonight's game is brought to you by Scott Fickner Injury Attorneys. They always fight for the win.
You mean attorney? It's one lawyer, Scott Fickner.
No, there's 2.
Brad Scott and David Fickner.
Ah, well, it's confusing.
That it is. They could have picked a better name.
Scott Fickner, Injury Attorneys, we fight for the win.
Once again, thank you to Scott Fickner for being part of the program. We're going to keep it rolling here. We got more comments to get through. You guys have been absolutely outstanding. I can't thank you guys enough. I mean, Monday morning, and this is going to probably go down as our most watched show. So I can't thank you guys enough. I'm a little I shouldn't be shocked because the Who Dat Nation is that great, but I really want to extend a thank you to you guys. Keep it rolling here. Jack says no one besides the Titans would be dumb enough to take Carr in a trade. Again, like I said, unless McDonald's is hiring, I don't think anyone's trading for Derek Carr. Dark Knight says we need to take a chance on a younger and up-and-coming coach that wants to build something of his own like the Rams did with McVay. Yeah, that's the ideal situation, right? That's the ideal situation. Getting a guy that could come in and be your coach for the next 15 years. That's what I want. It doesn't always happen that way. The next coach might be worse than Dennis Allen. But you know what? You had to fire Dennis Allen to figure out what you're going to do next. Hakeem says, I'm not opposed to trading back and acquiring 2 first-round picks. We ain't winning next year either. Not opposed to that either. But if the Saints are going to make a trade like that, they better get a first-round pick in the draft, though, of that year. You know what I mean? Like, don't trade a 2025 pick for, like, 2026 assets only. Like, you better be able to still be picking decently well in the 2025 first round and then get a 2026 first rounder. And honestly, that would be a good move for this team. That would really expedite the rebuild, so I'm with you on that. Too Short says we're stuck with that guy, which is absolutely ridiculous given his price tag. I guess you're referring to Carr. Raheem says Kubiak isn't Shanahan. Shanahan can make something out of nothing. Kubiak needs talent in order to make the offense go. When McCoy went down, his brilliance went with him. Yeah. Willie says apologies to can't guard Mike. You were right about DA, Mickey Loomis, and Derek Carr. Jordan says Mickey Loomis just completely out of touch. His statement screams that he can't admit he got it wrong. Simple as that. Yeah, I agree. There's a time and place for being buddy-buddy. When you fire a head coach, because he absolutely sucks, you don't go out there and say he's been an integral part of the team and that he never made excuses, which, by the way, he did make excuses. And I could go through a long list of excuses that Dennis Allen made. So I don't fuck with that. I commend Gail for doing the thing and making sure that they actually address the problem and getting rid of Dennis Allen. Can they address the second problem, though? That's also going to fall on Gail. Hakeem says Gail knows what this Sunday is bringing, and she's actually infusing energy in the franchise for Sunday's game. I agree. Space African Jesus says Bryce Young really got DA fired. I will stop calling him booster seat Bryce for at least 24 hours. Ernie says Brian Flores. Brian Flores will be in the mix. He'll be a name mention. I don't know how much better Brian Flores will make them, but Brian Flores will be in the mention. And Brian Flores' defense has been sensational in Minnesota. And it's funny because he took a defense that was god-awful in Minnesota and like overnight made them better. So we'll see. We'll see if Flores ends up being, one of the main candidates for that job. Space African Jesus said A New Hope can turn into The Rise of Skywalker very quickly is a bar. Yeah, I don't know. It kind of came off the top of my head. I also genuinely hate Rise of Skywalker. I think it's a terrible movie. So that's probably why it was on my mind. But yeah, I appreciate that. Captain Deluxe says, taste him to the Bengals where he'll never leave the field. Brian says, get rid of that damn training staff too. Please, for the love of God. That's the other part. The other thing is like people are worried about, if you hire the interim coach, like you make an interim coach, you might win some games. Guys, the injuries are going to keep coming because that hasn't changed. The training staff hasn't changed. The medical staff hasn't changed. The injuries are going to keep coming. So that's a problem. Hakeem says Ben Johnson ain't coming here. I think he wants his own QB, and I think he'll land in Chicago or Jacksonville. Saints will ruin a young QB with what we currently have. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think he's going to the Saints. I've kind of been out on that. I don't expect that to happen. Rose City says Saints will stink for a few years before it turns around. Just be ready, folks. Yeah, I think this could take a while. I was talking with my parents a couple of weeks ago about the Saints and how, like, I feel like I'm watching a lifeless team. And I said, I hope by 2028 they can make the playoffs. And I know that sounds so fucking stupid, but honestly, that might be when they make the playoffs again. It might be that long. Like, it's going to take a while. And I know that, and it doesn't make it any easier of a pill to swallow, but as long as you know it, maybe we'll have a little bit more grace as we go on. St. Doug says, where's Kai Harley? Great GM material for us. Move Mickey upstairs. I think that's what's going to happen, to be honest. I think that's what's going to happen, guys. Going to keep it rolling. What do we got here? Jerry says, I don't care if the Saints snapped out of it. DA is gone. Yellow Nose, I don't mind if we win a couple just as long as we stay in the top 5 to 10 in picks. Can trade back for more picks. We need as many as we can. Yeah, and look, let's pull up the Saints schedule real quick, guys. Let's go through it. So they got the Falcons this Sunday. They're not going to be favored for that game. Against the Browns, they'll probably be favored, but barely. Against the Rams, they're not going to be favored. Against the Giants, it'll probably be a coin toss. Commanders not favored. Packers not favored. Raiders may be favored. Bucks not favored. If, let's say, they win the games they're favored, and even then you don't know if that's a guarantee, they're only going to win 3 more games. So 5 and 12 will get you a top 10 pick. You do not worry about that, guys. They will be picking top 10. Apple Tart says, love the podcast, man. Keep it up. Sterling says, appreciate it, Chris. You're the GOAT. I really appreciate it, guys. You guys are fantastic. And I can't say it enough. I mean, on Monday morning, and at one point we were pushing 600 people in the live stream. That's just a testament to you guys. Hakeem says, best player available is where I'm at. Don't care for the top 2 quarterbacks, especially with our offensive talent. I think Will Campbell and or Travis Hunter should be the pick if we stay in the top 5. I don't disagree with you, I should say. I actually would love for them to get Travis Hunter. I think Travis Hunter would change the energy in that building. We lost Fontenot. Hope we don't lose Kai while oldest GM in the league, Loomis. I think Kai Harley is going to be their next. I think Kai Harley is going to be their next GM. I really do. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's where they're heading. C Money says, we love you, Miss Benson. Thank you for making the best decision for this organization's future because Mickey Loomis's bum ass sure wasn't going to do it. Kay says Darren Rizzi is him. Darren Rizzi is our head coach. He definitely has that swagger that fans are looking for. Knock Andrew says, as a Raider fan, I could say Carr is a bum. He is. Look, again, he might be a good dude, might be a great father, and that is what matters in life. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, this is just a game. But he does some shit that I just can't stand. Like yesterday, they're winning. They're up, I believe, what was it, 5? And he's laughing at the line of scrimmage about them almost getting the Panthers to jump off sides. And guess what, buddy? Y'all punted it down the field, and then the Panthers scored a touchdown to take the lead. And then you couldn't get your team down the field to win the game. So, I don't know. Derek Carr just gets on my damn nerves, man. He just really, really gets on my nerves. Jerry G says, I owe MT13 an apology. Rob says Carr won't be traded in season. This offseason, Carr will get moved with the Saints retaining some salary for a team that needs a bridge quarterback. I don't think anyone's taking him. I think someone will take him once he gets cut. I think that's where we're heading. I don't think they're going to be able to trade him. Michael says no more post-game excuses for DA. Hallelujah. Kay says Darren Rizzi's staying with us for a long time. We'll see. At the very minimum, I mean, he could end up keeping his special teams job. You never know. You never know. Rose City says Falcons going to walk in the trap and take over the trap. They're winning the division. Yeah, at 6-3. Tampa's banged up. Tampa plays Kansas City tonight. I think that it's shaping up for Atlanta to run away with this thing. TJ says chances of us drafting Sanders and giving Dion a chance. Probably not great, but I mean, I could see them drafting Shador. I don't know if they'll take Dion with him, though. Joe Mama says, look at the Commanders. 1 draft, a new head coach, and they are 7-2. Yeah, I mean, Washington's been killing it, man. You bring Jaden in, and the whole vibe changes. Rich says, getting a new quarterback isn't going to fix the bad O-line or terrible D-line. No, I mean, look, like I said, they need to fix the O-line. They need to fix the D-line. They need to fix the wide receiver room. They need to fix the quarterback. They need to fix the linebacker room. I mean, there are a lot of issues for this team. This is a rebuild. There's no other way to say it. Sliding Mace with the super chat. Thank you so much for the support. He says, Carr's going to Carolina. I don't know about it. Why would you want him if you're Carolina? I mean, I guess I would love for them to do that. And then the Saints could face Derek Carr twice a year. But I don't know if that's going to happen. Trey says, what percent do you give the Saints to trade Lattimore? At least 50. At least 50. I kind of think Lattimore gets traded before tomorrow's deadline. That's just my gut feeling right now. Rob says, Jeff Ireland's likely the next GM. I don't think so, to be honest. I think it's Kai Harley. I think it's Kai Harley. I don't think it'll be Jeff Ireland. Frankly, I think Jeff Ireland sucks. So that's kind of where I'm at. Saints 41 says, Dennis Allen, nothing but love for the Saints in New Orleans. Of course, I'm disappointed, but I love that organization. I love the people in there. And I will always have so much love for the city of NOLA. That was a Jay Glazer tweet, by the way. Yeah, I mean, look, I get it. Dennis Allen's been here for a while, and he's done some great things. Done some great things as a defensive coordinator. But it had to end. And a lot of things have to end, right? Good or bad. So, I hope he lands on his feet, but I'm glad this experiment's over. Ed says, I'm at work with a smile on my face and people looking at me like I'm crazy, LOL. So Mondays are my day off. I have Sundays and Mondays off, but Sundays and Monday obviously become my not really days off because of the Saints. I'm still technically working, but for me, I probably will have a smile on my face the rest of the day. Doesn't matter what I'm doing the rest of the day. I'll probably have a smile on my face, and it could completely go away in a week from now. You never know, but for now, I'll be happy. Fredo says, what do the Saints need in the draft? Quarterback, offensive guard, wide receiver, tight end, another running back, defensive line. I mean, they need pass rushers. They need defensive tackles. They need safeties. They need everything. They need everything. Honestly, it's not me being an ass. They need everything, Fred. The only position they might feel good at, if they like the process or progress, I should say, that Trevor Penning's made, maybe they feel good at offensive tackle, and you feel good at center because Eric McCoy is great. But you need safeties. You need defensive linemen, both pass rushers and interior. You need another linebacker next to Pete Werner because DeMario's getting older. So they'll need a lot of help. Xavier says, do you think Rattler can be our future with time? I don't, but I'm willing to give him another chance. I would love to see him play at the end of the season, him or Haener. I don't need to see Derek Carr anymore. I know what Derek Carr is. He's not good. But I don't think, if I had to put money on it, I do not think Spencer Rattler will be their franchise quarterback. Abraham says, Chris, do you really have hope Mickey will be moved out of the GM role? His lack of action in this whole situation, the tone of that press statement is concerning. I do. I really do. I don't know why. But you know what, guys? Earlier today, I was on Jordy Holtberg's show, and we were talking. He said, not gun to your head, but gut feeling. Does Dennis Allen get fired this morning? And I said, yes. I said, that was my gut feeling. I'm going to rock with my gut one more time. And I'm going to say, I think Mickey Loomis gets moved to a presidential role. And I think Kai Harley becomes the GM. Because I just don't think Mickey's cut out for being the GM of this team anymore. Jamil says, thanks for doing this show this morning. So happy. Love it. Thank you so much for those kind words. I greatly appreciate it. Like I said before, guys, you are all the reason this is damn fun. Like, I could sit here and chat my ass off for days. Don't get me wrong. But being able to have, a big community of people come in and share their thoughts and comments is truly awesome. Brian says the Saints need to conceptually change not only how they draft and choose new coaches, they need to change how they approach winning football games now. No more living off the Breeze Payton philosophy. Amen to that. Amen. Tracy says chances the Saints trade Lattimore. Yeah, I'm going to go 50-50. I'm going to go 50-50. Fantasyland Adventure says, do you think Valdes-Scantling can help at all? I know he hasn't played a ton since coming over. He could be a role player, but his best football is behind him. And by the way, his best football was with Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes, I guess. Like, it's a great quarterback. You're not getting one of those guys in the building. So I think he can maybe be a role player right now for this season, but long-term, I don't see any vision there. Abraham says, if you were put in this situation, what are the first few steps you're taking towards turning this thing around? I feel like it'll take at least a few years for this team to get close to contending again. It'll definitely take at least a few years. A few years is probably us being generous or not wanting to admit it. But you got to get the head coach right. I'm staying away from the Sean Payton tree. I'm not bringing in a Sean Payton guy. I think for this team, I think you're prioritizing good players in this draft. I'm not worried about position. Worrying about position is how you end up with guys like Isaiah Foskey. I am just drafting who I believe is the best possible player. And I'm doing that for 2-3 drafts in a row. And hopefully you hit on your picks. That's where I'm at. And I know they need a quarterback, but if they don't like the quarterbacks in this class, just get the best player available. Just do that. And eventually you'll strike and get your quarterback, and you can be aggressive enough to make a trade, but you don't have to force it. I think if they force it, we're going to be in we're going to be in a worse situation than we are right now. So my first move is making a change at GM. And they're not going to fire Loomis, but move him to a different role because you need a different voice in the building. Get a head coach who's not a Sean Payton coach and go from there. That's my first step. Roster-wise, it's going to be a while, guys. They're not going to have cap space. They're going to be old, so it's going to take a while. Mimon says, can Willie Green be next? I don't know. You Pels fans have to tell me. You think he'll be next? I genuinely don't know. Maybe this will be the year both New Orleans teams make a difference. Cam the Maker says, in Kai we trust. Damn right. Or at least we hope. Brian says, much of what the Saints need to change starts at the line of scrimmage, being able to run the ball and stop the run to make life easier for the new QB, whoever that may be. Yeah, you're right. And they're running the football better now that the O-line's a little healthy. Defensive line, though, is not good. That is not a good defensive line. Bruce says, hire Ben Johnson from the Detroit Lions as head coach. I mean, ideally, yes. I just don't think he's going to take that job. Michael says, is there a chance Michael Thomas could come back? I don't think so. I think he's burnt his bridges personally. Devion says, thoughts on Vrabel? I think he's a program builder. I do too. I don't know if that's who they'll get, though, but I do think Vrabel is a program builder. I do believe he is. I mean, the Titans made an AFC championship game. Xavier says, should we keep Kendra Miller and let Jamal walk? Definitely get rid of Jamal. But I think you might have to get rid of Kendra Miller too, man. I don't know. I think he's talented. He's got all the talent in the world, but he can't play because he's not healthy. Blake says, I just woke up and the first thing I searched on Google was Saints and saw the good news. It's about damn time. Isn't that damn awesome, Blake? What a way to start your Monday morning, huh? Bruce says, I would like to see the Saints hire Ben Johnson from the Detroit Lions as head coach. So would I. I just don't think it's going to happen. But to Lou's point, wouldn't this be the dream? Ben Johnson, head coach, Robert Saleh, defensive coordinator, pick a QB, make it happen. I would love that. I would absolutely love that. Jack says, we need an offensive-minded head coach because offense wins championships in today's game. I do not disagree with that at all. I think you absolutely got to go offensive head coach. I don't know if they will, and I think I'm a little concerned that their top two candidates probably will be defensive coaches, but they need to. They need to go out there and get an offensive coach, in my opinion. At least that's where I'm at. Jack says, what has Kai really done? The roster's trash and the cap is a mess. Again, it's not about what he's done. I'm not saying Kai's the guy that they should hire. I'm just saying if they move Mickey Loomis, Kai's going to be their GM. Like, they like what he does cap-wise. And what I will say, and I know the cap is a mess, Kai Harley manipulates numbers that other teams end up making the same moves, but he is kind of the innovator or the engineer of that everyone follows. Everyone mimics it after. So I do think from a financial standpoint, Kai is great. Blaming him for the cap, I think, would be wrong. I think that falls on the actual guys that were making the decisions. I don't think Kai was making those decisions. I think those decisions were being made and someone saying, hey, Kai, can you figure this out for us? And he's done the best he could. That doesn't mean that the Saints shouldn't look elsewhere. I wouldn't mind if the Saints look elsewhere, man. I wouldn't mind if the Saints look in Detroit's building. You know, I wouldn't mind if the Saints look in the Rams building. Those would probably be two teams that I look at a lot, you know. Rams, Lions, 49ers. Those teams operate on a higher level than everyone else in the NFC. Michael says, Saints fan from the UK, by the way, love the show. Thank you so much, man. I really, really, really appreciate that. Bruce says, a creative coach like Ben Johnson of the Lions would work wonders for the Saints team. Ideally, yeah. I don't know if it's going to happen. Raheem says, I'd rather build like the 49ers, get all position needs first and quarterback last, make it a system any decent quarterback can win in. I agree with that. Although I do think Brock is way better than people give him credit for, but I agree with that notion, right? That is how you want it. Abraham says, really appreciate the emergency pod. Chris, been following you for a while, but only found out about the pods this season. Great work. Thank you for tuning in and leaving your comments. I really, really appreciate that. You guys have been just tremendous. Captain Deluxe says, Deuce McAllister for head coach. I don't think that'll happen. Falcons fan forever says, good job to fire him. Coming from a Falcons fan, why, thank you. I mean, you guys know, you guys got rid of Arthur Smith when you needed to and been better ever since, 6-3. Joe Mama says, hopefully we don't draft someone that has spent his entire college career in the hospital, which seems to be a pattern. I mean, they've had some issues with drafting. There's no question about it. Marcus says, I'm glad Dennis Allen's gone. Me too. Eddie says, when that Mickey Loomis has been relieved of his duties drops, I don't know if that'll happen, man. Bruce says, Mickey kicked the can so much down the road, $90 million over the cap. It's going to be hard for a coach for a while. It is. And that's why it's so imperative you get the next guy right and you have patience with the next guy. And patience when it's warranted. If it's not warranted, it's not warranted. But if they show it, you got to preach patience, you know? Michael says some left field choices for head coach. Eric Bieniemy from UCLA, Frank Smith from the Dolphins, Joe Brady from the Bills, Kellen Moore from the Eagles, and Todd Monken from the Ravens. Yeah, I mean, those are all names that will be thrown out there. I feel like that ship has sailed for Bieniemy. Maybe I'm wrong. I just feel like it has. Frank Smith has been a name, but I don't know. Joe Brady, I mentioned before, I think Joe Brady's done a really good job, but life gets a little bit more difficult when you go from Josh Allen to Derek Carr as your quarterback. That's a big, big jump. Kellen Moore, he's bounced around. I don't know if he's ready, but the Eagles offense is clicking now, very much clicking, but look at the talent there. So it's going to be tough, but I think those are interesting names to bring up. And I think those are all guys that will be floated out at some point. Jack says, Drew Brees, next head coach or OC. And Abraham says, anyone reached out to Brees about potentially bringing him as a potential coach or coordinator? I don't know if they've reached out. I've asked Drew Brees 3 separate times if he would coach for the Saints. And 3 separate times, he told me no. Maybe that changes, but I don't think it will. Jack says, speaking of Mickey, Trey Hendrickson got his 11th sack yesterday for the Bengals, and Zach Bond looks great in Philly. Yeah, all bad. It's just all bad for us Saints fans right now. Jerome says, I'm worried about the reputation that's been created, need a complete culture change, and it's going to take a while. It is. And you got to hope they get it right. If they don't get it right, man, we're going to be in misery for like a decade, maybe more. So it's so imperative they get this right. Good to see one half of the coaches needing to be fired in NOLA Sports actually happening. Man, I haven't been paying attention to the Pelicans. I guess it is that bad right now. I know the Pelicans are banged up. Every time I check my timeline, Pelicans are suffering another injury, whether it's DeJounte Murray. I know McCollum's hurt right now. I was it yesterday they lost to the Hawks? That's pretty much all I've been up to date with. But yeah, I guess New Orleans sports right now, we've seen better days. Milton says Foster Moreau was a Raider, and he's definitely not a loser. All right, that's fair. Foster's not. That's one. I'll give you one. Not 1, not 2, but 3 times. Hoping 4th is the lucky one with Brees. Maybe it will. Brian says Todd Monken needs a QB, but I like him. He helped create a modern wide receiver you at LSU. And if you know your history, dude, I think Todd Monken's good. But again, like, are you going to have patience with these guys? That is the question, And I don't know the Saints, how much patience they will practice. I hope it's a good amount. Brock is special, but Jimmy G, Trey Lance, Nick Mullins, CJ Beathard, and Darnold all had success in that system. Brock gets hurt. Dobbs looks C2. I think we're kind of we're stretching the word success. Trey Lance was not good, in my opinion. Jimmy G did have success. Nick Mullins had some games of success. I won't give it to Beathard, and Darnold didn't play enough. Like, he played when the Niners were either blowing teams out or had an occasional blowout loss. But I'll give you Jimmy for sure, and I'll give you Nick Mullins, definitely. Trey Lance, who the fuck knows? That guy never plays, so it's tough to say. Cool Sports Rhyme says, out-of-the-box idea, Chris. Steve Sarkisian is head coach, DC Robert Saleh. If I'm Sarkisian, why would I leave Texas, though, for the Saints? Like, that's the question, I just don't see it. Chris says, Falcons fan here, isn't Mickey Loomis part owner in the team? Make it hard to get rid of him. I mean, he is officially locked in, I think he's pretty much family there. So that's why I don't think a change will be made. Captain Deluxe says, does the new coach play to win or look at the roster? I think I hope the next coach is more aggressive than DA. I'll put it that way, because DA has no aggression. Michael says what Frank Smith did as O-line coach of the Saints is very good at developing linemen and crafting an exciting offense. Hav C735 says, do you see any players getting traded before the deadline? I believe Lattimore will get traded. Don't have that sourced, but I believe he will get traded if they get the right offer. And hopefully for their sake they do, because I think that would help them towards getting more picks and rebuilding. Lou says, he means Boston Scott. Boston Scott has a workout with the Saints, former Saints player. He's feeling healthy. Saints need another running back, man. So I think that's a decent move if they sign him. Boston Scott's been a decent player. He's a giant killer, and they play the Giants later this year, so maybe that's why they want him. Abraham says, what are you telling candidates to make this a targeted destination? Feel like most people that look at the team don't see a lot of reasons to tie their career to it. It's tough. I think right now what you could sell on is having a high pick. What you could sell on is patience. I mean, you gave Dennis Allen 3 years. You gave him 3 years, and he didn't deserve any of them. So coaches will see that. But that's about it, guys. That really is about it. I don't think there's a whole lot you can sell on the franchise right now. They're old. They're declining. They're expensive. and they don't have cap space. It's a tough sell. And I won't lie to you guys. I won't say that it's a great sell because then I'm not doing my job. It's a really tough sell. Xavier says, think anyone wants Chase Young? Maybe. You won't get more than like a 7th round pick for him, but I would trade him for a 7th round pick at this point. He's not part of the team, you know? What should we do with veterans like Tyrann Mathieu, Cam, and DeMario next year? I think Cam's gone. I think Cam's gone after this year. I think he retires. DeMario, not sure. Tyrann Mathieu, I think he'll be back. That's where I'm at. So DeMario, question mark. Cam retired, in my opinion. And then Tyrann Mathieu, I think he will be back. Fuck it. Pull a Colts and bring in a retired center as head coach. What's Max Unger up to? Way more relaxed than he would be if he coached his team. Brandon says, ring up Belichick and Peyton Manning. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't, but who knows? I know, I think Larry Holder mentioned Belichick, and maybe it was tongue-in-cheek, but who knows? Raheem says, should we tank or do we go in with fire trying to salvage pride this season? I mean, I think you never try to lose games. You can do things to make it harder to win, and if the Saints keep losing, you probably should do that. Benching older players, starting the younger guys. Like, for example, Derek Carr. Like, I would sit Derek Carr at some point. But you're not going to like actively tank, but teams do it. Like the Panthers traded away Deontay Johnson. Funny enough, they end up winning this week, but that's kind of it. Shane O'Mac says, my money's on Aaron Glenn as head coach. So is mine if I had to bet. Her says under DA, they also didn't pay attention to analytics. I hope that changes. So do I. While I'm frustrated at the season, I'm not sad as the right QB and coach we can turn around quickly. Look at Washington. Yep. Jaden Daniels and Dan Quinn have turned it around. D'Amico and CJ Stroud in Houston have turned it around. Kind of random, but I miss Jarvis Landry. Sucks that injuries ruin his chance to play for this home team. Yeah, if I were ever complain about one injury ruining something, it'd probably be Michael Thomas because Mike was special. And injuries really derailed that whole thing, but Mike was special. So we've been doing this for over an hour and a half. You guys have been phenomenal. So we're going to go into our closing arguments here, presented by Scott McNair. All I'm going to say, guys, to put a bow on it and wrap it all up, this was the right move. Getting rid of Dennis Allen 1,000% was the move the Saints needed to make. It's the first step towards admitting you're not a good football team. What they do after this will tell us all we need to know about ownership, all we need to know about the front office, how serious they are about getting back to that standard of being a perennial playoff team. And if they do the right things, they'll get this thing back on track and we'll be winning football games again. And as a fan base, we'll be happy. But if this was just a move to make, just a fire DA to please us, and all of a sudden you go right back to the same bullshit, it's going to take a while. So great job by Gail Benson stepping in and getting rid of Dennis Allen. All the moves they make, moving on next couple of weeks in the offseason, January, February, that is a telling point. And can they get a guy in that building who isn't a Sean Payton disciple, but instead someone you can build your program around? That is the key to building a playoff team once again in New Orleans. So we'll see what happens, guys. But I want to thank you so much for tuning in and leaving your comments, your thoughts, your super chats. You guys have been outstanding. So again, thank you so much. We'll be back with more content this week because Saints got a game to play with. They got a game. Falcons next Sunday. Darren Rizzi as the coach. We'll talk all about it right here on the Straight Up Saints podcast, the destination for the Who Dat Nation.